This is TWiT.
Google is cracking down on Android phone and SMS-using apps. That is, apps that ask for phone and SMS permissions. Last Monday, Paul Bankhead, who's the director of product management for Google Play, posted to the Android developers blog. So this is written, as we'll hear, to developers. But I wanted to share this with our listeners because I'm glad Google is like taking these steps. It's going to cause problems, but unfortunately, we've been too permissive in the past. So he has his first little paragraph, TLDR, says, as previously announced and directly communicated to developers via email, in other words, don't blame us, we warned you, we'll be removing apps from the Google Play Store that ask for SMS or call log permission and have not submitted a permissions declaration form. If you have not submitted a permissions declaration form and your app is removed, see below for next steps. And then he explains, he says, we take access to sensitive data and permissions very seriously. Well, yeah, they do now, or increasingly do. He says, this is especially true with SMS and call log permissions, which were designed to allow users to pick their favorite dialer or messaging app, but have also been used to enable many other experiences. I would like put air quotes there, experiences that might not require that same level of access. In an effort to improve users' control over their data, last October, we announced we would be restricting developer access to SMS and call log permissions. Our new policy is designed to ensure that apps asking for these permissions need full and ongoing access to the sensitive data in order to accomplish the app's primary use case, and that users will understand why this data would be required for the app to function. And of course, we've also often talked about the overbroad, you install an app and it needs access to all kinds of stuff that seem completely, tangential to the app's intention or purpose, or why would it need that? So he says developers whose apps used these permissions prior to our announcement were notified by email and given 90 days to either remove the permissions or submit a permissions declaration form to enable further review. And he says, we take this review process seriously and understand it's a change for many developers. We apply the same criteria to all developers, so they're not taking sides, including dozens of Google apps. We added to the list of approved use cases over the last few months as we evaluated feedback from developers. So that they allow that's in other words, they allowed developers to explain why they needed access to this, even though you wouldn't at first blush maybe have thought so. He says our global teams carefully review each submission. During the review process, we consider the following. 5 points. First, likelihood that an average user would understand why this type of app needs full access to the data. Second, user benefit of the feature. Third, that's really good. I hope Google's really, it sounds like they're really going to honor this, and they should. The user benefit of the feature. Third, the importance of the permission relative to the core functionality of the app. 4, risks presented by all apps with this use case having access to this sensitive data, meaning if everybody asks for this, what does that mean? And then 5th, availability of more narrow alternatives for enabling this feature. In other words, isn't there a better way to achieve the same thing that doesn't require giving this permission? So this is all for the best. This is great. They said with this change, some use cases will no longer be allowed. However, many of the apps we reviewed with one of these permissions can rely on narrower APIs. In other words, they were just, the developer was kind of lazy and said, yeah, just give me all this. Reducing the scope of access while accomplishing similar functionality. For example, he writes, developers using SMS for account verification can alternatively use the SMS Retriever API, and apps that want to share content using SMS can pre-populate a message and trigger the default SMS app to show via intents. In other words, that's a perfect example of using, instead of just getting global access to SMS, use a specific narrow API designed to do just and only that aspect, the SMS account verification through this SMS Retriever API. He says tens of thousands of developers have already resubmitted their apps to support the new policy or have submitted a form. Thank you. Developers who submitted a form received a compliance extension until March 9th. And he goes on about next steps. But anyway, I just think this is great. I mean, this feels like, lessons learned from the road and from the real world. And it's always painful to take things away which had previously been given. But Google is learning through interaction with, their platform out in the world that, ouch, we need to take this more seriously. There are all kinds of clever ways we hadn't thought of for the things that we were permitting apps to do to abuse those permissions. So we're going to create narrower APIs first, and then we're going to force apps to use those or to explain to us why they can't get by with using those. So, I just, yes, it's what we need. So, props to Google for that.